Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mighty Stream. Today is July the 2nd. I'm brought to you by Hope Through Navigation, and this is our Hood Recovery Services. I'm looking forward to doing your Just for Today in a meditation for July the 2nd. You can reach me at recoveryofhope21@gmail.com. Let's go ahead and get into this. Let's see here. All right, comparing. Wow, this should be good. Our personal stories may vary in individual pattern, but in the end, we all have the same thing in common. Taken from basic text, page 87. We addicts are a varied bunch, coming from different backgrounds, having used different drugs, and recalling different experiences. Our differences don't disappear in recovery. For some, those differences become even more pronounced. Freedom from active addiction gives us the freedom to be ourselves as we truly are. The fact that we are all recovering doesn't mean that we all necessarily have the same needs or goals. Each of us has our own lessons to learn in recovery. With so many differences from one addict to the next, how do we help one another in recovery, and how do we use each other's experience? We come together to share our lives in light of the principles of recovery. Though our lives are different, the spiritual principles we apply are the same. It is by the light of these principles shining through our differences that we illuminate one another's way on our individual paths. We all have two things in common: addiction and recovery. When we listen carefully, we hear others tell of suffering from the same disease we have suffered from, regardless of their specific backgrounds. When we open our ears, we hear other addicts talk of applying spiritual principles that promise hope to us as well, regardless of our personal goals. Just for today, I have my own path to follow. Yet, I'm grateful for the fellowship of others who suffered from addiction and who are learning to apply the principles of recovery, just like me. I like that. I like comparing. I like the topic of it, the essence of it, the spirit of it, is that although we have these two things in common, addiction and recovery, the way that you might need to apply the spiritual principles of recovery to your particular life, your particular circumstances, will be different than the way that I will need to, although those spiritual principles are ultimately the same. The spiritual principle of, let's say, love. Okay, so if you are a person who is a parent, you're not only a parent, but you also have grown children and you have grandchildren. And you have children that are codependent. You're codependent and they're dependent upon you, right? Okay, so at some point in time, you notice that your grandchildren are not relating to their parent, your child, in the way that children and parents normally relate. They relate to you as the grandparent more as their first parent, almost as if you've birthed your own grandchildren. So love in that instance would look different. If you're the parent and you're noticing that your child does not have the parental influence upon your grandchildren that they should, your love for your child would cause you to act differently because you need for your child to cut that umbilical cord and stop depending upon you to parent their children or your grandchildren. Okay, so I hope you followed me on that. Love would look different in that situation. Love would take the form more of tough love, because now you need to correct your child and say, listen, I don't mind you dropping Jimmy off, every Saturday. But it's ridiculous for you to think that I'm going to run him to school on Monday because you haven't come back to get him. And then he comes home on Monday to my home. And sometimes he doesn't even see you to Tuesday or Wednesday because he is so comfortable at my home and less comfortable in the home that you built for him. You're the parent. You need to correct that. So from here on out, you can bring Jimmy over at 12 o'clock noon on Saturday, and you must pick him up no later than 8 p.m. He will not do any more overnights until you get in the pattern of raising your own child. Am I clear? Okay. So love in that instance is having foresight that the relationship between Jimmy and his parent is at stake if you don't do something different. Now, right? Let's take a young couple. They've had children, and here in Michigan, the mother will be given most of the rights for raising that child. They break up, they have an awful breakup, and the father still wants to interact with his own child, but the mother cannot stand him. Now, the father is in recovery, the mother is not. The mother is the one that's using. What would love look like for that father when it comes to his son, who is only 2 years old, little Jimmy? What does love look like for that father, young in recovery? Every time he gets Jimmy, sees Jimmy, he's got food smeared all over his face, his feet are dirty. He's obviously not well kept because the mother is in the bedroom high most of the time, and she's taking care of a toddler, supposed to be taking care of a toddler. Love in that instance would most likely look like the father taking custody, going to court to get custody of little Jimmy so that little Jimmy can have the type of upbringing that he deserves as a child. Love looks differently depending on the circumstance. The principle of love looks differently based on who's needing to apply it, but the principle of love is the absolute same. It gives to the other person, it believes in the other person, it cares for the other person ultimately, right? But how it is applied is different. I'm hoping this makes sense for you. I'm hoping that it makes sense. I love this just for today. And today, what I want for you to do is I want for you to, in the light of someone else's recovery, in the light of how they share, how they apply spiritual principles in their life, in their situation, in the light of that spiritual principle, I want you to listen and learn. Don't be so quick to judge the other person, because you never know when someone else's light that comes from applying principles in their life will touch your life and you will benefit thoroughly from it. You know, my name is Mighty Stream. I love doing the Just for Today. The weekend, for some reason, is a little bit awkward timing wise, but I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a beautiful weekend.